I, 29 male, work as a systems administrator for a mid-sized logistics firm. I have always been a pretty quiet guy, mostly keeping to a simple routine of work, hitting the gym, and hanging out with two guys I have known since middle school. Best friend and childhood friend are my absolute anchors in life. We have been through literally everything together. We are talking high school graduations, college rejections, family passings, and cross-country moves. They are the kind of friends who do not even need to knock when they come over to my place. 3 years ago, fiancé entered my life. She was vibrant, outgoing, and commanded every single room she walked into. I was mesmerized at first, but over time, that commanding presence morphed into a subtle, suffocating control. She always had a snide comment about my friends. She would constantly say they were immature or that they distracted me from our relationship. I foolishly brushed it off as just differing personalities. I could not have been more wrong. Everything blew up on a random Tuesday. Best friend's wife was scheduled to be induced for labor that morning. I had been anxiously waiting by my phone all afternoon, expecting a text or a call with the good news. By 8 p.m., the silence was totally deafening. I felt a massive spike of anxiety, assuming something had gone horribly wrong with the delivery. I picked up my phone to dial best friend. It went straight to voicemail. I tried childhood friend next. Straight to voicemail again. Completely confused, I opened my phone settings. I scrolled down my phone app and tapped on my blocked contacts list. There they were. Both of their numbers, sitting right there on the blocked list. I just sat on the edge of the couch, staring at the screen in disbelief. Fiancé walked into the living room, holding a glass of wine, looking completely relaxed and unbothered. I held up the phone so she could see the screen. I asked her why best friend and childhood friend were on my block list. She did not even flinch. She took a slow sip of her wine, sighed heavily, and looked at me with this incredibly patronizing expression that she usually reserved for when I bought the wrong brand of paper towels. She looked me dead in the eye and said my friends were dragging me down. She actually told me she was blocking them from contacting me for my own good. She said I needed to focus on us and our future, and that they just held me back. I just sat there processing her words. She had actually gone into my phone, invaded my privacy, and severed my 15-year friendships without a single word, all because she felt entirely entitled to curate my life. I did not yell. I just stood up, walked right past her, and went into our bedroom. I grabbed a medium-sized moving box from the top of the closet, one we had used for storing our winter coats. I systematically opened her dresser and started pulling out her everyday clothes. I grabbed her makeup bag from the vanity, her toothbrush from the bathroom, and her laptop from the desk. I placed every single item into the box. She followed me into the bedroom, her patronizing mask finally slipping into genuine confusion. She asked me what I was doing and if I was throwing a tantrum. I taped the box shut. I picked it up, walked back to the front door, and set it on the welcome mat. I turned to look at her. I told her that since she was looking out for me, I was going to start looking out for me too. I pointed to the box and told her to give me her keys. Her face flushed dark red. She started screaming, demanding to know how I could throw away 3 whole years over what she called a stupid prank. I still did not raise my voice. I just held out my hand and waited until she practically threw her keys at my chest. She stormed out into the hallway, dragging the box behind her, slamming the door so hard the pictures rattled. The very next morning, while I was drinking my coffee and finally reading the flood of texts from best friend about his healthy newborn daughter, my phone rang. The caller ID showed fiancé's therapist. I answered, and the therapist sounded extremely hesitant. She told me she was calling to check on fiancé's well-being. She explained that fiancé had contacted her late last night in a state of extreme distress, claiming that I had experienced a severe psychotic episode, destroyed all of her belongings, and physically forced her out into the street. The therapist actually asked if she needed to dispatch emergency services to my location. I leaned back in my chair, absolutely floored by the audacity. I calmly explained to the therapist that fiancé was currently staying at her parents' house. I told her I did not lay a finger on her, but rather packed a single box of her essentials because I caught her secretly tampering with my personal devices to isolate me from my support network. I told the therapist that fiancé handed me her keys and left on her own, and I highly recommended she evaluate her client's relationship with the truth. The therapist was dead silent for a long moment before thanking me for the clarification and hanging up. Fiancé was already spinning a wild narrative to make herself the victim. I knew right then that this was not just a messy breakup. This was going to be an absolute war. Fiancé did not take the eviction lightly at all. By Thursday, her entitlement had fully weaponized. I was working from home when I heard aggressive, loud knocking at my door. I checked the peephole and saw fiancé standing there with a guy in a work shirt holding a toolkit. A locksmith. I immediately swung the door open, stepping right into the frame so neither of them could enter. I asked if I could help them. Fiancé crossed her arms and smugly declared that she lived there, that I had illegally evicted her, and she was having the locks changed back. I looked right past her to the locksmith and told him I was the sole owner of the property. I informed him her name was not on the deed, she was not on the lease, and if he touched my door, I was calling the police for attempted breaking and entering. The poor locksmith backed away instantly with his hands raised. He wanted absolutely no part of this mess and practically ran down the hall. Fiancé was furious. She pulled out her phone and dialed the police herself. When the officers arrived a few minutes later, she put on an Oscar-worthy performance. She was crying hysterically about being a legal tenant who was cruelly thrown out onto the streets by her abusive ex. The older officer calmly asked for her ID to verify her residency. She handed it over with this triumphant little smirk on her face. The officer looked at the card, frowned, and looked back at her. He told her that the address on her ID was listed as a P.O. box on the completely opposite side of town, and the system showed it had been issued 3 weeks ago. Fiancé completely froze. Her smirk vanished. She had secretly changed her legal mailing address weeks before our breakup. I had absolutely no idea she had done that, but the officer explained to her that by voluntarily leaving the premises with her belongings, and having already established a new primary legal mailing address, her tenancy claim was completely invalid. They told her it was a civil dispute, she would have to take me to court if she wanted back in, and then they escorted her off the property. I was incredibly relieved to see her go, but the P.O. box revelation really bothered me. Why on earth would she change her legal mailing address 3 weeks ago, while still living with me? The answer came the next day, and it unraveled a massive, interconnected plot that showed exactly how deep her betrayal actually went. First, on Friday morning, I was unexpectedly called into a mandatory virtual meeting with my company's HR director. Fiancé had sent a massive, multi-page email to my company's executive team. She claimed I was using company servers and software to illegally track her location and stalk her. It was a blatantly malicious attempt to get me fired and ruin my career. Thankfully, being a systems administrator, my digital footprint is meticulously logged down to the second. I provided HR with my complete access logs, proving I had not touched any unauthorized tracking tools or accessed anything outside my normal workflow. HR cleared me immediately, but strongly advised me to get a restraining order. That same Friday evening, I drove over to best friend's house to finally see his new baby and vent about the absolute madness of the last few days. While we were sitting on his back porch, he pulled out his phone and handed it to me. He told me he had tried to send me a message on Tuesday afternoon, right around 4 p.m. I looked at the screen.
It was a photo of fiancé.
She was sitting in a very high-end restaurant downtown. Across from her, holding her hand intimately across the table, was another man. Best friend explained that he had taken Tuesday afternoon off work to run some final errands before heading to the hospital. He had stopped near that restaurant around noon and saw them through the window. He snapped the picture but got distracted with baby prep. Around 4 p.m., he finally texted the photo to me. He said he watched his phone say it was delivered. A minute later, he tried to call me to talk about it, and it went straight to voicemail. The pieces violently snapped together in my head, completely fixing the timeline that had been confusing me. Fiancé had been sitting right next to me on the couch that Tuesday afternoon around 4 p.m. My phone was resting on the coffee table between us. She must have seen the preview of best friend's text pop up on the lock screen. She casually intercepted my phone, deleted the text with a photo of her cheating, and instantly blocked best friend to stop him from calling and warning me. She blocked childhood friend too, knowing best friend would inevitably call him to relay the message. But it got worse. Best friend works as an auditor for the regional bank where I hold all my accounts. He told me that when he could not reach me on Tuesday, and knowing what he had just seen at the restaurant, he got a really bad feeling. He ran a soft, internal check on my profile at the bank. He found out that a new platinum credit card had been opened in my name exactly 3 weeks ago. It had been fully approved and mailed out. I just stared at him, totally numb. I told him I had not applied for a credit card in over 5 years. He nodded slowly and told me the mailing address for the card statements had been routed to a new P.O. box.
She did not just cheat on me.
She stole my identity, the blocked friends, the new P.O. box, the fake HR claims to discredit me. It was all a desperate, calculated cover-up to secure funding for her secret double life. She genuinely thought I was just an oblivious atom she could drain. The realization of her financial crimes changed the entire landscape of the situation. I was no longer just dealing with a toxic, entitled ex-partner. I was dealing with a literal criminal who felt utterly entitled to my finances, my credit, and my professional reputation. I immediately hired a lawyer. He is a highly pragmatic, incredibly sharp-minded attorney who specializes in civil litigation and fraud. We sat in his office first thing Monday morning and pulled my full, detailed credit report. The damage was absolutely staggering. Fiancé had not just opened one card, she had managed to open 2. Both were completely maxed out to the tune of $24,000. The itemized charges were basically a geographical map of her infidelity. There were weekend hotel stays in a neighboring state, ridiculously expensive dinners, couples spa retreats, and designer clothes. She had funded her entire affair using my credit, intercepting the physical cards from my mailbox before I got home from work, and routing all the paper trails and statements to her secret P.O. box. I told lawyer we needed to go to the police immediately. He agreed, but told me we were going to build an ironclad case first. He said entitled people like her always overplay their hands because they think they are smarter than everyone else. He told me to just wait for her to make a fatal mistake. Lawyer's prediction came true exactly 48 hours later on Wednesday. Fiancé was clearly growing impatient. Her attempt to get me fired had failed miserably. Her attempt to force her way back into my condo with a locksmith had failed. And worst of all for her, the credit cards, the ones in my name, had been completely frozen by me the moment I left best friend's house on Friday. She was entirely cut off from the funds she was using to impress her affair partner. She sent me an email. She actually CC'd her personal email and my personal email, probably assuming this made it look like a highly official legal document. The subject line simply read, "Settlement." The email started by claiming she had spent 3 of her prime years dealing with me. She said I threw her out with nothing, which was entirely my fault, and that she was rightfully owed for her time and emotional distress. Then came the kicker. She wrote that if I did not wire $30,000 to her personal bank account by Friday at noon, she was going to the local police and going public on all my social media platforms. She threatened to tell my family, my remaining friends, and my employer that I violently abused her, controlled her every move, and forced her out onto the street. She even bragged that she had already told therapists this exact story, so there was an official medical record to back up her claims. She ended it by telling me to pay her what she deserved, and she would walk away quietly. I forwarded the email directly to lawyer, without typing a single word. He called me back within 5 minutes, and I could practically hear the massive grin on his face through the receiver. He told me she had just committed felony extortion in writing. He explained that under our state laws, making a direct threat to falsely accuse someone of a crime or ruin their professional reputation in order to extract money is textbook blackmail. We had it in writing, from her known IP address, sent directly to me. She had handed us the final nail in her own coffin. Lawyer immediately contacted the local police department's fraud and cybercrimes division. We went down there and handed over a thick, incredibly detailed binder. It contained the proof of the IP addresses from the malicious HR emails, the exact timestamps of the fraudulent credit card applications originating from her personal laptop, the surveillance footage from my apartment lobby showing her intercepting my mail, and, finally, the extortion email. The detective assigned to the case reviewed the binder and shook his head. He said she was highly motivated but incredibly reckless. He came up with a plan right there. He told me to reply to her email and set up a meeting. He instructed me to tell her to come to my apartment on Friday to collect the rest of her furniture and discuss the settlement payment. He stressed that I should not explicitly promise her the money in writing, but just tell her I wanted to settle everything in person to end the drama. I went home and typed out the reply exactly as the detective instructed. I told her to come by the apartment on Friday at 1 p.m., bring whoever she needed to move her half of the furniture, and we would resolve the settlement then. She replied almost instantly. She told me she would be there, demanded I have the check ready, and warned me not to try anything stupid. The sheer arrogance was mind-blowing. I spent Thursday night moving all my valuable electronics, important documents, and sentimental items into my master bedroom and locking the solid wood door. I left the living room exactly as it was. I wanted her to walk in feeling completely and utterly victorious. I wanted her to genuinely believe that her dirty tricks, her boundless entitlement, and her manipulation had finally broken me down. Friday rolled around. At 12:45 p.m., 2 unmarked police vehicles quietly parked in the visitor spaces at the back of my condo complex. The detective and his partner came up through the back stairwell, so they would not be seen from the parking lot. They stood completely out of sight in my kitchen, waiting quietly. At exactly 1 p.m., a rented moving truck pulled into my driveway. Fiancé hopped out of the passenger seat looking incredibly smug. Fiancé's father and fiancé's mother got out of the cab. She had actually brought her poor parents to help strip my apartment bare. I opened the front door. Fiancé marched right past me without a single word, her parents trailing awkwardly behind her. She stood in the middle of my living room, put her hands on her hips, and loudly started barking orders. She told her dad to take the television and the expensive surround sound system. She told her mom to go into the kitchen and start packing the appliances, specifically demanding my high-end espresso machine. Fiancé's father looked at me nervously, clearly uncomfortable with the hostility, but he started walking toward my TV anyway. I leaned casually against the wall and told him I really would not touch that if I were him. Fiancé scoffed loudly and rolled her eyes. She loudly declared that we had an agreement. She demanded to know where her check was, stating she was not leaving my apartment until she got her $30,000. She actually said she earned that money dealing with me and my pathetic friends for 3 years. I kept my voice perfectly calm and asked her if she earned that $30,000 the same way she earned the $24,000 by opening fraudulent credit cards in my name to fund her secret affair. The room went dead silent. Fiancé's mother gasped loudly and asked what I was talking about. Fiancé waved her hand dismissively, her entitlement completely blinding her to the massive trap she was standing in. She scoffed again and told her parents I was just being dramatic because I was broke. She proudly admitted, out loud, that she had every right to use that credit because we were engaged and our finances were going to be combined anyway. She actually called the stolen money an early advance on her alimony. I raised an eyebrow and asked her how she expected alimony for a marriage that never even happened. She lost her temper completely. She pulled her phone out of her pocket, got right in my face, and snarled that I needed to give her the check right now, or she was posting the abuse story immediately. She screamed that she would ruin my life and make sure I never worked in the IT industry again. Right on cue, a deep voice from the kitchen calmly said, "I think you have done enough." The detective walked slowly out of the kitchen, his gold badge clearly displayed on his belt, his partner stepping out right behind him. Fiancé physically dropped her phone. It hit the hardwood floor with a loud, sickening crack. The blood drained from her face so fast she actually looked ill. Fiancé's father took 3 rapid steps backward, raising his hands in the air like he was the one being arrested. Fiancé started stammering, her voice suddenly trembling as she asked what was going on and who they were. The detective pulled a pair of heavy metal handcuffs from his belt. He introduced himself as a detective with the Financial Crimes Unit and calmly informed her that she was under arrest for felony identity theft, mail fraud, and extortion. The complete and total breakdown of her reality was absolutely incredible to witness. She instantly started screaming, crying hysterically, and begging her parents to do something to stop them. She tried to frantically backtrack, claiming to the officers that I had verbally authorized all the credit cards. But the detective completely shut